Gunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and welcome to my Madeon Madness bracket. If you have no idea what's going on here, basically every year since 2018, I've taken an artist that I like a lot and put them in an NCAA March Madness bracket, taking all of their songs and pinning them up against each other, battling it out gauntlet style. In 2018, I did Eden. In 2019, I did Porter Robinson, and I was a little bit lost as to who exactly I was going to do this year until pretty recently, and Madeon ended up coming to mind because, fairly recently he put out his second album. It's a massive expansion to his discography, whereas I couldn't have done a 32 song bracket in this style with his music before because he didn't really have quite that much music. I asked my Twitter followers for some suggestions, and there were definitely some good ones, but I ended up sticking with my gut on this one. I think it's a really appropriate time to do a tournament like this with Madeon. He definitely hasn't been the absolute most influential artist in my life, but I feel like he's got a small yet consistent enough discography to make a tournament like this interesting. He's got a really solid track record going back to his early days, his first singles and remixes, mashups, and things like that, all the way to his newest music. But most importantly, he doesn't have just one or two songs that really stick out to me as his career highlights or anything like that. I think he's got a lot of really good stuff, which would match up really nicely for a tournament. And I would consider myself to be a pretty big fan of Hugo's, even though he's not one of my absolute favorite, top 5 artists of all time or anything like that. I think he's one of the best musical gifts France has given us. I've got both of his studio albums on CD as well as the Shelter Special Edition compilation, and this one is definitely one of my prized possessions as it's got that nice Madeon autograph. So yeah, even though the NCAA March Madness Championship tournament seems to be indefinitely canceled for this year, I thought we could still have some fun and do this with Madeon. So basically the way that I set up this tournament is I've got all of his originals that are available on streaming services, which is, Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud. Within that, I have some of the songs condensed so that if any two songs are a part of essentially the same movement, I've included them as the same song. For example, Isometric and You're On, and Nirvana and Mania. And because I had a couple additional spaces, I also included Madeon's remix of Raise Your Weapon by Deadmau5, which is undeniably his most iconic remix, and then Pop Culture 2, the mashup that put him on the map to begin with. I also want to note before we get into this that I'm going to have the bracket posted in the Madeon subreddit, so you guys can fill it out if you want to as well, though the matchups here are completely randomized, so don't take your complaints to me if two songs you really love get matched up head to head in the first round. So starting off here, we've got a pretty solid mashup between The City, which is one of Madeon's breakout singles, versus Home, which was the closing track on Adventure. And honestly, this is a really tough one for me. The City was the song that really ultimately got me into Madeon to begin with. Obviously, I had heard some of his stuff, maybe a couple of his remixes and Pop Culture prior to this song, but this was really the song that cemented my love for him. And then Home is just an extremely impactful, emotional closer to Adventure. I'm really torn here because I really love both of these songs, but ultimately I think I'm going to go with Home, at least for this poll. Definitely one of the standout highlights from the Adventure album. I've heard a lot of songs try to kind of take the little, synth pop, synth wave kind of infusions of the song and recreate that, and I don't feel like any song has done it quite as well, whereas The City is kind of not necessarily like your standard Madeon electro French house type tune, but I feel like there's more like it. that do it just as good or better. So I'm going to go with Home for this first round. Here we've got another really solid one. We've got another closer here, Borealis, which was the closing track for the Good Faith album, versus Pop Culture. And yeah, this one's going to be another really tough one because once again, I think Borealis was an amazing closer for the Good Faith album. I thought it capped it off excellently, yet Pop Culture is one of the most innovative and groundbreaking mashups of really all time. And yeah, that's tough. As much as I love Borealis, I think I'm going to go with Pop Culture on this one. And here we've got Finale versus Technicolor. Finale being a Madeon, I guess you'd say drum step song, which I think is the only one of his songs that really goes down that avenue toward kind of breaking in a little bit into that melodic dubstep vein, versus Technicolor, which was a really incredible song around the time it released. Being released around the time Big Room was really at its height, and it was a huge breath of fresh air. And I'm a pretty big Walk the Moon fan as well, so Finale definitely has a special place in my heart. But honestly, when we're talking like technicality and just him bringing out his production in the most standout kind of way, I feel like Technicolor is gonna top it. Here we've got Isometric and You're On versus Stay Awake, one of his only collaborations with another artist, straight up with Ellie Goulding. And yeah, this one's going to be another tough one here. Stay Awake is a really cool tune. I think the only drum and bass tune that Madeon ever did, and it's really cool. Does a great job of balancing between Ellie's styles and his own, while, obviously it's drum and bass, it's a different sound for Madeon, still kind of sounding like him, whereas You're On and Isometric is just a really amazing Madeon tune, a great introduction to the Adventure album, amazing vocal chops, and it just is a great movement overall. I'm going to have a hard time eliminating Stay Awake here, but I'm going to go with Isometric and You're On. And here we've got another two-track movement, Nirvana and Mania versus Dream, 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 all tunes off of the Good Faith album, and definitely highlights here in this case, so that one is really tough. I'm not sure what I'm gonna go with here. Yeah, Dream, Dream, Dream obviously being a really cool intro, infusing some of those gospel elements that I was really looking forward to hearing on Good Faith, a really great introduction into what exactly Madeon was going for on the Good Faith album, whereas Nirvana and Mania is just this really cool movement, obviously involving two parts, but it's just a really cool sequence of tunes in kind of like a style that I never expected to hear from Madeon to begin with. I think I'm going to go with Nirvana and Mania here just because it has like more of a progression. Obviously it's two different songs, so it might not be fair to say that, whereas I do like a lot of the infusion with Dream, 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 and I think it's a great intro track. I think Nirvana and Mania is just a more complex, more compelling musical piece, so I guess I'll go with it. And here we've got the Deadmau5 Raise Your Weapon remix versus Only Way Out, and I'm gonna pick the Raise Your Weapon remix here, and I hate to do it because I think Only Way Out is a severely underrated Madeon track. I wish it would have made the main cut for the Adventure album, but it ended up getting thrown on the second disc deluxe edition, which was always weird to me. For one, it throws off kind of the vibe of the second disc just because, that second disc had most of those foundational Madeon tunes. But yeah, I hate the fact that I'm going to eliminate it because I think it's a great track here, but the Raise Your Weapon remix is just way too fantastic. One of the coolest remixes of its era. And definitely a foundational and iconic remix for Madeon, so gonna go with that. And here we've got OK versus Hold Me Just Because, and this one's not going to be too hard for me. I think, Hold Me Just Because is okay. ironically there. Okay is a really solid track, I think. Really, really good, like French electro tune, following up Isometric and You're on the debut Madeon album. But I think it is a really cool tune for what it is, whereas Hold Me Just Because is one of the ones that feels like it kind of falls into the background for me on the Good Faith album. Not really one of the highlights. Whereas Okay, I wouldn't necessarily say is one of my absolute favorites on that album either, but I would probably say it's more of a standout than Hold Me Just Because for me, so I'm going to put it through. And here we've got, this one's going to be really tough for me. I don't know what I'm going to pick. Miracle versus Heavy with Hoping, two of my absolute favorites from the Good Faith album, and Miracle has grown on me a ton recently. Once again, more gospel influence coming through on that track, and just like a really great pop tune. It's got some great breaks and kind of switch ups in it that I think make it kind of like a quintessential Madeon tune. And Heavy with Hoping, that's really tough because that one consistently gets stuck in my head. I think it's got some like great chord progressions in it. One of the coolest uses of like vocal processing I've ever heard. So yeah, this is really tough. I don't know what I'm going to put through here. Honestly, I think I'm going to go with Miracle here, which I didn't really expect. When I was kind of thinking through this poll, I was expecting Heavy with Hoping to end up going through to maybe even like the semifinals or something, just because I've been jamming on it so much recently. But when I look at the tracks like objectively and when I think of them as musical pieces, I guess, and what they bring to the table, and when you consider the thought of fan favorites and such like that, I think Miracle is going to come out on top as well. So yeah, I'm going to put Miracle through to the next round, surprisingly. And here we've got No Fear No More versus Shuriken. No Fear No More being another one that I feel like kind of fades into the background of the Good Faith album. Not necessarily a huge highlight for me. And Shuriken, I think there are much better tunes from Madeon's early discography, but it is a really cool electro tune, and kind of like a foundational tune for Madeon, obviously. So yeah, I am going to put Shuriken through to the next round here. And here we've got La Lune versus Shelter, and if La Lune were against any number of tracks here, I probably would have put it through. I didn't mean to spoil that right there. But yeah, I love Dan Smith, love Bastille, and I think him and Madeon make a great combination on this tune. But Shelter is... that's just kind of unfair. That's tough. Shelter, obviously, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, it was a tune that it took a lot to grow on me. I didn't really love it initially when it first dropped, but especially with the anime short film that came out with it, I feel like it added a whole new level of depth and detail to the song, and emotion, I guess. So now every time I listen to the song, I just want to like break down in tears. So that's that's tough. That's a tough mashup for La Lune, but I'm going to put Shelter through in this case. And here we've got Beings versus Zephyr, which I'd say is a pretty solid mashup because neither of those on the Adventure album are, I would say, like major highlights for me. But I probably am going to put Beings through just because... I think that was the one that Porter did the like live cover of on the Shelter tour, and I really enjoy it for that. It makes it definitely a memorable cut from that album for me. Yeah, more memorable vocals and more memorable melodic elements. So, and Zephyr is definitely one of the more forgettable ones on the album for me. So I am going to put Beings through here to the next round. And here we've got Icarus versus For You. For You, I think, being the first original that Madeon uploaded on his SoundCloud. So I'm going to feel kind of bad here, eliminating such like a good deep cut from his discography. But Icarus is just way too good to not put through here. So yeah, I'm gonna put put Icarus through to the next round. And here we've got All My Friends versus Innocence. Innocence being a song that took me a while to appreciate as much as I do now. I think it's a great kind of quiet and emotional moment on the Adventure album, considering so many of the tracks are just like big and huge and bombastic, whereas Innocence is more subtle and kind of ethereal. But when pinned up against All My Friends, I really can't not put All My Friends through, because it's just such a fantastic introduction into the newest wave of Madeon music, while still having that kind of groove that a lot of his early music had. So yeah, I'm gonna give it to All My Friends in this case. And here we've got Cut the Kid versus Pixel Empire. Two tunes that I really like a lot. I think Cut the Kid is a fantastic kind of Madeon electro type tune, and yeah, it was a really cool moment for him going back to kind of his early days when the single came out, whereas he was kind of leaning into that pop influence a little bit going into the Adventure album. And yeah, I think it's a pretty underrated Madeon tune, but Pixel Empire, that might be another kind of unfair mashup, because I think Pixel Empire is one of the more really cool and epic type tunes, maybe even a little bit of like experimental influence on that one, on the Adventure album. So I think I'm going to give it to Pixel Empire in this case, but that sucks. I'm sorry, Cut the Kid. I didn't want to eliminate you so early. And here we've got Imperium versus Pay No Mind, two of my definite personal favorites from the Adventure album, and this is going to be a tough one, but I think I'm going to give it to Imperium, just because it's a really crazy, cool, experimental tune. It took me a little bit to appreciate the song, definitely. It was definitely a grower for me, because it is kind of a weird track, whereas Pay No Mind is more inherently catchy and poppy. I love, Passion Pit on the song. I think he was a great choice for a vocalist and a feature on the Adventure album, but Imperium is just way too cool. So I'm gonna put Imperium through, which sucks, because Pay No Mind is definitely one of my favorite cuts from that album, but I gotta do what I gotta do. And here we've got Nonsense versus Be Fine, and this is kind of another tough one. Neither of them are necessarily my favorite on their respective albums, but both of them are still solid in their own right nonetheless. I think in this case I'm going to give it to Nonsense, just because Be Fine I think has a really solid groove to it. Definitely one of the highlights on the Good Faith album for me, but Nonsense I think has one of the most maybe memorable Madeon melodies, a little bit of alliteration there, of his career. Fall back and close your eyes. Mark Foster, I think, from Foster the People, made an excellent feature on this tune, and the song's got great groove, a lot of really cool production elements kind of weaved into the mix too, so yeah, I think I'm going to give it to Nonsense in this case. And kicking off the second round here, we've got Home versus Pop Culture, and man, that is another tough one, because here we've got one of, in my opinion, Madeon's most emotionally impactful tunes versus maybe his most iconic piece, when, obviously we're including mashups as well in the mix. Yeah, that's tough. My gut right now is telling me Home, and I don't want to eliminate Pop Culture in the second round just because it's such an iconic mashup. But I feel like I gotta go with Home on this one, so I'm gonna do it. And now we've got Technicolor versus Isometric and You're On, which is clearly another tough one here. I'm gonna have to go with my gut feeling again here, and I think I'm gonna go with Technicolor. It's just such a cool electro house tune. And it's almost unbeatable in the case of Madeon's more electro-leaning stuff, especially in the time period it came out. It's just such a cool freaking tune. And You're On, as much as I love it, I just can't quite put it above that. So yeah, I'm gonna give it to Technicolor. And here we've got Nirvana and Mania versus the Raise Your Weapon remix. And yeah, I guess at this point I'm just going to keep having to go with my gut feeling here, and I think I'm going to go with the Raise Your Weapon remix. As cool as I think the sequence of Nirvana and Mania is on the Good Faith album, the Raise Your Weapon remix is just like way too iconic, way too like ear-catching, just such a cool take on the original song, whereas the original was like more depressive and like dubsteppy. Madeon kind of came in and flipped it on its head, and I think that was definitely a cool take on the song, more than cool. So I'm going to give it to the Raise Your Weapon remix. And here we've got OK versus Miracle, and this one's going to take a little bit of the weight off my shoulders here, because I think I'm just going to straight up give it to Miracle, as much as I do think OK is a really cool tune. Miracle is definitely one of the coolest highlights on the Good Faith album, one of the coolest infusions of styles and textures and, you know, whatever else. So, you know, OK is cool. It's cool enough. But yeah, I'm going to just give it to Miracle here. So let's move on to the next one. We've got Shuriken versus Shelter. And once again, I feel like one of Madeon's more underrated cuts is getting just going to get completely overshadowed by Shelter here, because as cool as of a tune as I think Shuriken is, Shelter is just way too good, way too emotional to you know, let it loose to one of Madeon's more like standard electro tunes from his early career. So yeah, I'm gonna give it to Shelter. And here we've got Beings versus Icarus, which is another one that I don't seem to have to go with my gut, because I'm just gonna straight up give it to Icarus. Just such a fantastic tune, and Beings is fine, I suppose. Like it's good for what it is, but it's no Icarus. It's not that good. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put Icarus through to the next round. And then we've got All My Friends versus Pixel Empire. And yeah, I honestly think I'm going to give it to Pixel Empire here. Despite how much I enjoy All My Friends, despite how much of a great groove I think it has, and kind of bringing out Madeon's vocals in a more serious way for the first time, I suppose. With him, you know, like actually trying to do like a more poppy style vocal on his own terms. I think I'm going to give it to Pixel Empire. It's just way too much of a highlight on that album for me to pass up. So I'm going to go ahead and put it through. And then we've got Imperium versus Nonsense. And yeah, you know, I mentioned in the last round I really like Nonsense. I think it's a great tune. Wish it would have gotten more recognition on like the radio or whatever. I think it had the potential to do it. But Imperium is just such an incredible tune, incredibly unique. And focused. Undeniably one of the weirdest and yet coolest tunes Madeon has put together. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Imperium here. And here I think this would be considered the quarterfinals. Kicking it off, we've got Home versus Technicolor. And yeah, this is going to be another really tough one for me, eliminating one of the two tunes that I definitely would consider favorites of mine from the Madeon catalog. You know, my gut feeling is once again telling me Home. Like I just can't possibly let it down here. I can't possibly let it go. Despite how cool of a song I think Technicolor is, it just I guess like emotionally just doesn't really hit that same level as Home does for me. And you know, in terms of uniqueness, I don't think it quite hits it there either, even though Home might not be as like technically or like production wise quite as complex as Technicolor. I think Home is just one of the more unique cuts in Madeon's catalog, and like, you know, him as an artist overall. So yeah, I'm gonna kick out Technicolor here in favor of Home. And then we've got a Raise Your Weapon remix versus Miracle. And yeah, I didn't honestly see Miracle going this far when I was originally conceptualizing this video, but I think I'm going to give it to Miracle. Yeah, I as much as I really enjoy the Raise Your Weapon remix, and I think it's an iconic tune, I think Miracle is definitely going to go down in Madeon's history as an artist as one of his most impactful tunes, and one of the coolest blends of styles. Even though Raise Your Weapon obviously is a historical moment for Madeon too, I think I'm going to give it to Miracle here. And here we've got Shelter versus Icarus, and I think this is the point in the video where I'm finally going to kick out Shelter. Despite how much I think that's a great song and just packs emotion almost like nothing else, especially when considering the music video kind of short film that goes with it. Icarus is just like that quintessential Madeon, French electro type song that I just think is pretty much unbeatable here. So yeah, I'm going to take out Shelter in favor of Icarus. And here we've got Pixel Empire versus Imperium, which is definitely a tough mashup. Two of my undeniable favorites from the Adventure album. But yeah, I think I'm going to give it to Imperium in this case. I'm going to have to go with my gut feeling here because it's just such a unique experience, one of his more cool and I feel like ultimately underrated tunes. It still holds up great today as like a more experimental kind of almost like bass music influenced type song, where it weaves in kind of those weird sounds as well as with the chord driven sections of the song. And Pixel Empire is cool for what it is, but it's not quite Imperium, so I'm gonna put Imperium through the next round. And finally, breaking into the semifinals here, we've got Home versus Miracle. And this is really tough. It's strange to me the way these matchups ended up working, because when I conceptualized this video originally, I didn't really think of Home or Miracle really being this high. So it's very strange to me to see both of these songs here in this far. As great as I think both of them are, whichever one I pick is probably going to end up getting beaten by whoever ends up in the other one, which I still haven't figured out which one I'm going to put through on that one either. I think I'm going to give it to Miracle here, even though I'm not even sure if I would consider Miracle like my top pick on the Good Faith album. I guess it's just like such an interesting song, and the way he brings in all of the different influences, it's pretty much like your quintessential Madeon Good Faith style tune. And it does such a great job of blending in new and old Madeon together, whereas Home conceptually is really good. It does a great job of closing the Adventure album. Its blending isn't quite on the same level, I guess, so I'm going to give it to Miracle here. And here we've got Icarus versus Imperium, which is undeniably going to be the hardest pick for me on this entire thing, because these are probably what I would consider like my two favorite Madeon songs, both in the like way of experimentation and just like memorability. These are both two absolutely essential songs for him. And if you guys remember in my I think it was like top 50 EDM songs of the decade video, Icarus was actually my pick for Madeon on that, just because I feel like it was the most like essential song that somebody ought to listen to from him if they were going to listen to like one from the decade. But when it comes to this matchup, this is just really hard, because like Imperium is just like such a unique moment in the Madeon discography, and even though Icarus I feel is like the really the highlight of his kind of like electro type sound, and a crazy impactful tune, I'm not sure if I can put it above Imperium. And I think that I won't, more than anything probably just to keep things interesting here, just to make this result not super predictable, because obviously I did already highlight Icarus in that one video, and I love these songs both so much. They're pretty much on an equal level here, so I think I'm going to put Imperium through. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So here we have the final round, Miracle versus Imperium. We've got, it feels weird to say this, but maybe my favorite track now on the Good Faith album versus definitely my favorite song on the Adventure album. So yeah, this is a really tough choice here. Just kidding, it's not all that tough. I'm gonna give it to Imperium. I'm gonna make Imperium the winner of my Madeon Madness 2020 bracket here. Yeah, it's just such an amazing song, such a unique moment both in Madeon's discography and, you know, in EDM overall. I still haven't heard a song quite like this in, you know, my history of listening to music. And yeah, even though I kind of pictured Icarus ending up winning this bracket, I'm happy to declare Imperium the winner here just because it's such a cool tune. If you haven't listened to that one yet, I would definitely recommend doing it. It's wacky, it's weird, but it's also super catchy, a testament to both Madeon's production abilities and, you know, his abilities as an experimenter. Great tune, and that obviously, I don't want to put down Miracle because I think it's an amazing song too, and does a lot of really interesting things. But Imperium is definitely the one for me that stands out as the more unique moment for Madeon, while, you know, also representing him as an artist. Even though they both do a really good job of representing what he does, I think Imperium does it while also kind of pushing you know, outside the box a little bit more. So yeah, Imperium is the winner here. Like I mentioned before, if you guys want to download this bracket for yourselves, I'm going to have it down in the description below, a link so you can go check it out, maybe fill it out, and if you want to, you can let me know what ended up winning your bracket down in the comment section below. Yeah, this was always, as always, a really fun video to do. I always enjoy doing these because I can never quite picture what's going to end up winning, and the results definitely caught me off guard, even though, you know, like I said, it pretty much came down to making things interesting here because I couldn't really make a proper decision between Imperium and Icarus. Yeah, I definitely don't feel weird about giving it to Imperium because it's just such an amazing tune. But yeah, make sure to download that bracket if you'd like to and try it out for yourselves. Feel free to post it wherever. If you want to credit me, that would be super cool. I guess there's not going to be a streaming link or anything like that down in the description because I don't really know what I'd put there. I'm not talking about an album or anything like that in this video. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, make sure to consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you liked the video too, that'd be super duper cool. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.